Well, good afternoon and welcome to our Calm COVID Convo. As many of you know that have been on our Calm COVID Convos before, they all started with the start of COVID and the impact on business. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to take all the stress, all the hype, all the drama out of the discussions around COVID and how that impacted business. Over time, we still have many businesses that need our support, and there's still people that need information. But over time, we've found that there's other businesses that are ready to evolve the conversation into the other side of the COVID curve. Start thinking about those other things we should be doing within our business to be setting ourselves up for the other side of this. Now, every business, every industry is going to be different. Every industry will come back in a different amount of time, or they might snap back on, or some might slowly come back on. But irrespective of where you're at, we want to make sure that we're having those convos with you to share with you the different things that you should be doing. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Knight. I'm the founder and managing director of Business Depot. Joining me again today, of course, is Rebecca Mahalik from Business Depot Sydney. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, John. It's great to be on here again today.
And of course, our special guest today is Kate Carnell. Kate Carnell is the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman. I must say that is a mouthful, that title.
It's
Kate.
A dreadful name.
But of course, you also previously Chief Minister of the ACT, CEO of the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. You've got an Order of Australia at the end of your name as well. But more importantly for the discussion today, you're a powerful advocate for small business. So welcome.
Thank you very much, John. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and Rebecca as well. Thank you.
Now, this is an amazing opportunity for our audience to ask someone of Kate's calibre some questions. So we want to dive into the topic of what's the future look like for small business? What do we need to do to get there? And all those types of things. We've had some amazing conversations over the last couple of weeks, including Trent Innes from Xero, Glenn Richards from Green Cross, and they're great discussions. And now we've got another perspective. We've got a perspective in here for the future of small to medium business. So I thought I might start, Kate, by asking you, I suppose, where did you get your passion or empathy for small business?
Well, I have to say, probably from my dad. He set up a small business with his brother and brother-in-law, classic family business. He was an accountant, interesting, and his brother and brother-in-law were both engineers, one structural, one a design engineer. They set up a domestic building company the year I was born. So I grew up in small business. And there's nothing more with more ups and downs than the building industry, I'd have to say, particularly domestic building. So, you know, we were either, you know, quite well placed or, you know, eating Vegemite on toast. There was nothing in between at our place. But I bought my first business when I was 25. I'm a pharmacist. In fact, I started medicine, but I decided I really wanted to run businesses. And I have to say, doctors are the world's worst people at running businesses on the whole. So I decided to be a pharmacist. Bought my first business when I was 25, my second when I was 26, then had my first child. So that's my third born. And then bought my next pharmacy and then had my next child. So a few pharmacies, very much small business. So I reckon the things that the most important lessons for me, whether it be in politics or senior exec land, I learnt behind the cash register, really, or behind the dispensary. You know, that's real world.
Yeah, isn't it funny, these people that were born into family business? I've got a similar story, being born into a family business. You were as well, weren't you, Rebecca?
No, not quite actually, but my family, my dad and my mum were both second generation born in Australia. So we had that strong get in, work really hard immigration, ethnic background behind us. So we've always worked really hard at everything we've done.
So knowing that, I suppose that coming from that place of empathy, and you're in there now as an advocate for small business and family enterprises, of course, what are you most concerned about for business owners at the moment?
Look, right at the moment, you know, business is based upon confidence. There's no doubt, and it's pretty tough out there. Let's be fair, for lots of businesses. So the thing I'd like, that I'm concerned about is that no one could have planned for this. We all in business try to have our plans, our cash flow plans, our strategic plans and so on. Nobody planned for this. And all of a sudden, and because we really don't know what, the future really looks like, or for that matter, what the timelines are, I'm worried that there's a lot of small business people who have almost put their head in the sand a bit and are saying, oh, well, I'm getting JobKeeper. That'll keep my staff, fed at least. I've kicked a lot of my expenses down the road, my bank payments, my ATO, I've done a deal with my landlord and I've deferred rent. I've done a deal with my insurance company and deferred that, so on and so forth. And so I can just sort of hang in. Well, the reality is business isn't like that. We know that. And so I'm worried that business people aren't focusing right now when they can on what their cash flow looks like going forward, what happens after September 28th or October when JobKeeper goes, and also most importantly, focus on what their customer base or what their business looks like post-COVID. Because I think anybody who's thinking the world will just revert to what it looked like before COVID is really, really kidding themselves. I just don't think that's real.
Yeah, we interviewed Glenn Richards last week and he used the analogy of the dimmer switch for bringing business and bringing the economy back on rather than just flicking back on. But as you say, or as you said before in the preview, it's almost like there might be a different room that we're turning the light back on for as well.
Look, there's no doubt about that. I think a lot of people with having to do something none of us thought we'd have to do, and that's work from home, have very little contact with, direct contact, with friends, with family, with, a whole range of things, have worked out that there's a whole range of things you can do, without being in the workplace, without being able to go to the pub, to the restaurant, to the coffee shop, all of those sorts of things. So we've got to think about, what people are going to value going forward. As I was talking to one of my staff, you met Donna before in the preview. Donna was saying she initially really missed the gym, but now because the gym she goes to, which is a small gym, is doing online classes and so on. She's never done as much exercise as she's doing at the moment, and she's really enjoying being able to go to classes when it suits her. So fascinatingly, will she go back to the gym? Yes. But will she continue to do online classes? Yes, she will. So she doesn't want to go back to what it looked like before. And I think that's really common.
Well, I think they say it takes 28 days to create a habit, doesn't it? And, there's been many people locked out of gyms and so forth for more than 28 days. So it will be interesting to see what new habits we have at the end of this. Rebecca, do you relate to what Kate was talking about there around the businesses sort of just pushing these debts down the road? Is that what you're seeing at the grassroots level as well?
Yeah, and particularly in certain industries, there's industries that were immediately impacted really quickly. I think a lot of SMEs, small businesses went into that panic mode. What can I stop paying? What can I push down the road? What can I get waived permanently? The problem is there's not a lot that can be waived permanently. Everything's going to come back eventually. So we need to start planning because as you said, John, we've been here now nearly 2 months. So those 6 months deferrals, we're nearly halfway through. So how are we going to deal with all that is the next round of questions we need to be answering.
And importantly, there is still those sectors of the economy that are still closed down, like you used the gym sort of analogy. But then there are this other group of business owners that we're finding are probably a little bit impatient with turning the dimmer switch back on, and they just want to get on with it. Now, that I don't want that to come across the wrong way for those businesses that are closed, but people are wanting to now, there's this group that are wanting to focus on the other side of things. Are you seeing that in any of the research you guys have been doing or any of the people you've been talking to, Kate?
Look, a huge amount. So just very recent research done in New South Wales showed that about 75% of businesses are totally open now. So they're actually trading. Of the 25% that aren't, a lot of them are trading at some level, and then there's the ones that aren't. But of the 75%, they're really grown in terms of their confidence. I think what they're thinking is, okay, I'm going to get through this. We're going to make it. So what does this look like going forward? So that's a really huge change from, say, 3 weeks ago, where the level of confidence was pretty ordinary in the space because most people simply couldn't see where this was all heading. So that's a good start.
And there's been some great business model innovation. I mean, there were businesses that needed to innovate before the start of this. There were businesses that were struggling before this. And they may, what are they calling them? Zombie businesses or something or other as they sort of, if they survive through to the end of JobKeeper. But there's been some amazing innovation from a business model perspective.
Look, absolutely. And the innovation we're talking about now is not, IT, smart,
No.
it's the baker. And I'll give you this example. Crust is their name. This poor bloke, he's been a pastry chef for a long time, worked at one of the best bakeries in Canberra, and went out on his own in October. Now, in Canberra over Christmas, smoke.
Yeah.
There was just smoke everywhere. So being outside was really awful. And a lot of his work was done at outdoor markets, indoor markets, and so on. So he was in all sorts of trouble. So what he did was he converted his van, his delivery van, into a shop, really. And what he's doing now is using online marketing, predominantly via Facebook, but other approaches. And he's put a speaker on top of the van. So he's turned into Mr. Whippy, except he's not using green sleeves. It's all right. So he's turned into Mr. Whippy, and he is going around this Canberra suburbs, advertising where he's going to be. So I'm going to be in this suburb or this suburb, and selling out of the back of the truck. Now, the reality is he's selling out every day.
Right.
So he's turned into the sourdough Mr. Whippy of Canberra. So, good on him.
He's got a lower cost base too.
Absolutely. So he'll still do and still is doing markets, but he's got this whole new business model and a whole new customer base that, he'd never contemplated before. So he's going to his customers, not his customers having to come to him. And while people have been, I suppose, staying in their own homes, that's really interesting. And I think I have to run from that to say, for lots of people, I'll keep working from home. I don't think this big transit back into, bigger big office buildings in CBDs are going to happen in a hurry. Apart from anything else, public transport's a bit of an issue in major cities. But I think just generally, people do want to have more goods and services closer to home. In fact, in their home, if it's my mate, my staff member who gets her gym fix in the dining room.
The important thing in that is the customer, like you talked about before, Kate, in that the customer has found a new experience that they've obviously liked. And therefore, like you said, Crust is going to the customer, or the gym or the workout is going to the customer.
Look, this is absolutely true. And as we know that we've had this cooking revolution, so people cooking from home. And another one of the cases I really love is a hatted restaurant. So this is an upmarket restaurant who thought, we can't really just do takeaways in plastic containers. It's just not what we do. So they're doing, the box meal with the YouTube video telling you how to put it together, but not sort of down market stuff, seriously upmarket stuff, and things that were on their restaurant menu that many people would have had before. So for events like birthdays, all those sort of things. You know, you can go and get the 3-course meal from the Hatted restaurant and put it together yourself following the instructions. It's worked really well for them. Upmarket, not cheap, but hey, you know, worked.
And that's innovation. Innovation doesn't have to be about the technology and so forth. You know, obviously technology can still enable these things, and Rebecca leads our national offering around tech advisory as well.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, I mean, when you talk about technology, you talk about the efficiency gains that you get out of technology to really improve processes, don't you?
Absolutely. And that's one of the key things with technology is how can you implement it? How can you use it? What can you automate? What can you make happen quicker and cheaper to make your business leaner so that there are more of these businesses are actually sustainable into the future that have great ideas?
Absolutely.
Can I just interrupt there? That's so important, isn't it? Because, you know, when I bought my first business, technology was really expensive. You know, I mean, my first computer was an Apple IIe. And, you know, I thought this was the cleverest thing in the universe because I could take, you know, T1 TDS PC, and it came up on the pharmacy label, take one 3 times a day after meals. I thought it was amazing.
Auto text.
I mean, fairly obviously it wasn't amazing, but it was amazing back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Now, though, the opportunity with, you know, I heard you had Trent from Xero on the show. You know, with the Xero MyOb, you know, the great software systems, but then the apps that run off the back of that, you can, you know, manage your stock, manage your staff, do your rosters, all sorts of stuff that you could never have done before. And that's before we even get into digital marketing.
That's right. And it's even more than the automation, the efficiency piece. It's all about having that real-time access to your information so business owners can make those rapid decisions that they need to get through the day-to-day instead of waiting months and months for financial data to be manually entered and to be figured out, that they're able to make real decisions that impact everything that's going on almost the minute that they need to nowadays, which is incredibly important. And I think it's really driven some of those businesses that have been able to pivot quickly because they knew that they had to. They could make the appropriate decisions in the right time.
But they knew their business to make that decision quickly, didn't they? If you don't know your results and if you don't know your business, if you don't know what's driving it, you're going to muddle around in thinking about what to do. And so this is an opportunity, and we've seen it with many businesses that have now sort of got their data sorted or taken the opportunity to put in some new apps or something or rather to streamline things and get better data.
Look, it's absolutely true. And there's a range of places you can get access, you know, to the apps that are working well for businesses in whatever sector you're in. You know, I know that Xero have a place that you can go, you know, that with a whole range of apps that fit with their system. I know Google does. You know, there's a whole range of these. They're not expensive. All you've got to do is determine, you know, what you need to do more efficiently. And so I always look at it as what's the things that are driving you most insane in your business? You know, what are the things that are taking just too much time? And look at how you do them better, because there's no need for that to be the case anymore.
I do think though, Kate, I think there's almost too many options out there, which is why we end up seeing people come to someone like Rebecca to say, which one's the best one that I should use for this situation, and put this app in or I'll help you do it. But, you know, what we have seen through this time is people have moved so much faster. They have implemented and made those decisions so much quicker than they had previously.
Look, it's absolutely true, and they're the ones that are going to survive, really.
And they're probably going to thrive at the end of it. They're going to have a better business at the end of this, which is ultimately what they want.
Absolutely.
I want to shift the discussion now, and I'm keen to get your thoughts, Kate, around the support that business owners truly need during this time. Obviously, we've got the cash boost payments which have come out. We've had some instant asset write-offs. We've got JobKeeper, of course. Or maybe I'll start with, do you think the support that's been provided is good, is useful? And what other support then do you think they need?
Look, I think the respective governments, federal and state, have done an extraordinary job. I might have some views on keeping borders closed, which might not be so positive, but in terms of, financial support, it's amazing. I live in Canberra, and for Treasury and the ATO, talking about pivoting their businesses really quickly, they've certainly done it. And, look, there's going to be, some accounting mistakes, and we've seen some of those in the last couple of days. But just to start, when you think about it, they've done some extraordinary things, and they've done them incredibly quickly and kept a lot of businesses alive through a really difficult time. And by the way, let's be fair, in terms of actual cases of COVID-19, Australia has done extraordinarily well, and continues to do so. So they've managed to get, I think, a good balance between business, keeping the economy at least, chugging along, even if it's only chugging rather than streaming, and managing the health issues. Not a simple thing to do. So that's really, really good. I think the challenge now, though, is for government to look at, so what needs to change now to equip businesses for life post COVID. I mean, how do we really get the economy powered up and going forward? And I think there's the challenge, and those require real policy changes.
And there might be things that we haven't done before. I know there's always the discussions around infrastructure and so forth, but businesses are pivoting and coming up with new ways of doing things. Maybe there's some new ways that we need to inject some life into the economy as well. And one of the things I've been really impressed by, and I'm interested in your opinion, Kate, is the idea of exporting Australian services to overseas now seems to be back on the agenda a lot more. I've often thought Australians think of themselves as an island, because we are on an island, and they don't look overseas enough. Are you seeing anything in that regard?
Look, absolutely. And I think also one thing that's happened is that I think Australia realises that, in exporting terms, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And so the importance of looking at what's available, what markets are available globally. And the federal government's done a lot of free trade agreements, which, remember, include services in lots of places. So whether it's, it's Indonesia or Japan or Korea, there's work going on at the moment for an EU free trade agreement, and one with the UK. We've got one with the US, Canada, so on. There's a whole world out there, and it's not just about China. China is important and will continue to be so, but there is a broad range of opportunities, and a lot of those services particularly can be provided digitally and online, so don't totally require you to hop on a plane immediately. So thinking outside our borders is really important. But, for a little while, I think one of the things, the challenge for government is to ensure that from a procurement perspective, government procurement, whichever level of government it is, that we really do focus on Australian SMEs and make sure that the business has the thing they want more than anything else, and that's business. I mean, I rarely hear businesses say, the thing I want most in the world is a grant. That's not what they say. They say the thing I want most in the world is business. I want customers. I want people to buy what I provide. So I think for a little while, it's really important that the government focuses a whole lot more. Governments focus a whole lot more in ensuring that government procurement, which is about $11 billion a year, that they do focus on Australian goods and services. We have to be competitive, but all things being equal, I reckon Australian SMEs should be over the line.
Do you think there will be a bit of a shift to more local manufacturing as well, where security of supply becomes a more important consideration for businesses?
I don't think there's any doubt in that. And John, I'm on the Australian Made campaign board, and that's, you know, the triangle with the kangaroo in the middle. You know, okay, it's been around for a very long time, and it promotes Australian Made. Over the last 3 months, the level of interest in finding out what's Australian made, you know, how we get Australian made, and that's Australian services, Australian grown, and so on, has been exponentially bigger. So we've ended up with 600% increases in our social media spaces. Even in a time like this, we've ended up with significant numbers of new members, businesses that are paying to use the kangaroo. So what Australians are saying is that, hey, we actually do care about this. We really don't want to be totally reliant on, you know, on overseas food, overseas services, you know. So we want to know what's happening here. So fascinatingly, Australians want to buy Australian. They want to buy Australian goods, services, and so on. So from small businesses out there perspective, make sure the way you sell what you do makes people understand that you are local, that you are employing, you know, in Australia, that you're, you know, that's who you are, because Australians want to know that right now.
Absolutely. And I love your focus on services there as well, Kate, in that often people don't think about services as an export, but it can be.
Oh, and it really is. I was talking to a couple of mining engineers from Kalgoorlie not so long ago, who had been made redundant and thought, oh, you know, this is no good because, you know, we're 50, it's all bad, you know, we're not going to get jobs. And their one of their sons, I think it might have been daughter, anyway, delivered a website for them selling their mining engineer services, you know, online, and they thought, oh, this is going to be, you know, this is not going to go anywhere. These guys have got now a business that's thriving because they're mining, the services that they can provide are relevant globally, and they're selling them globally.
It's one of our actual strengths, you know, the Australian small businesses and the quality of the services we provide, and we've got on our doorstep countries that need it.
Absolutely. So never assume that just because you happen to be mining engineers from Kalgoorlie and means you can't sell your significant expertise offshore, because you can.
Absolutely. Rebecca, you got a question there for Kate.
I do. We've got a question here. There's a comment that you've been championing and advocating for better finance arrangements for small businesses for some time. And considering the disruptions at the moment, what is the status on that front? And that might actually, I also wanted to ask you a question around the payment times reporting bills. So I think that will work together a little bit if you want to shed some light for those people on the call who don't actually know what the bill's about.
Sure. Look, payment times really matter just to small business, as we know. You know, cash flow's king, all those things that we all know about. And the great dilemma, you know, with an increasingly global economy in the past have been, you know, the move by some multinationals to pay slower, to have contracts that are 90 days end of month, those sorts of contract terms, which are just totally unacceptable and make it really hard for small businesses to make their cash flow work. And so over a period of time, a few years, we've done a lot of research into this space, and I have to say, put pressure on governments and others to say, look, you know, if we want the economy to work well, we've got to have money flowing through the economy quicker, really. Just a really quick statistic, Barack Obama moved federally in the US to pay small to medium businesses in 15 days. The Harvard Business School did a review 3 years after that was implemented and determined that it delivered 75,000 jobs and $6 billion to the pay packets of Americans just by paying quicker. Now it's fundamentally important, and right now during COVID, there's a chunk of businesses who have determined that they can push their cash flow problems as big businesses down the supply chain to the little guys who have got nowhere to go on this, and that is not all right. Now, what's happened so far is we've said to government, look, at the end of the day, you're going to have to legislate 30 days or less. Now, they haven't done that yet, but they have tabled a piece of legislation which will require big businesses that turn over more than $100 million to report their payment terms and times, what they're actually doing on a regular basis. Now, it doesn't force them to pay quicker, but it exposes them if they don't. And my office is in a position to keep them honest, to make sure that what they've got on the table really works. Now, I think this is a step in the right direction, but I'm not sure that a lot of particularly the big multinationals, are going to significantly change their payment times without legislation. On a positive note, though, governments have. The federal government now is at 20 days, New South Wales is 2, and with the move to e-invoicing, they're moving to 5 days. And
Great.
Which is fantastic, because there aren't checks and there's not the post. So you can't see the checks in the post, and that's the reason it's going to take, whatever it takes to get to you. There's no reason that invoices shouldn't be paid really quickly after you get an invoice that you can be confident is real.
And it's a simple thing that bigger businesses, that governments can do, that has a massive impact on small businesses, because the longer they push out those payment terms, 90 days or whatever, that is a loan that is sitting on their books, that is money that would otherwise be spent, as you say, on jobs. And so it doesn't actually cost them more to do it. It just brings those payments forward.
And we've got to keep focus on this, because again, I'm still incredibly frustrated that there's not an insignificant number of large multinationals who say to me when I talk to them, I say, oh, Kate, yeah, but you haven't got any legislation in Australia, and therefore we'll decide, what our payment terms and times look like from New York or from London or wherever. Not okay, certainly not good corporate citizens. But, if they're not going to change because it's the right thing to do and good for the economy, locally and globally, then legislation will have to happen.
Yeah, it'd be interesting whether that attitude changes at all in the next little while, Kate. I've noticed through this time that the human element, the human sort of feelings, that attitude of we all are in this together and we all have to do something to sort of help you. It'd be interesting as to whether the consumers sort of change their view on those brands, maybe in line with some of the views on big banks in the last little while as well.
Look, I really hope so. And I hope that the message is for those, big corporates I was talking about who, aren't fixing up their payment times. I hope that consumers say, well, look, at the end of the day, we're not going to deal with those companies that aren't doing the right thing by, local farmers or manufacturers or service providers generally. And I think there's much more chance that that's going to happen now, because we sort of realise if we don't look after each other, we can't really rely on anybody else.
I'm a big supporter of the government and what the ATO have done with JobKeeper and how quickly they have put that in place. I know they've got a bit of slack for a few different things. One in particular was the ability for small businesses to find the funds to pay the minimum repayments before they get it reimbursed, which brings the whole banks into the discussion, doesn't it? Do you have a view of what you want the banks to be doing to sort of help small business, or anything you'd advocate in that regard?
Look, I think the banks have stepped up to the plate during this period. I'm not sure they would have before the Royal Commission. I hope they would have, but they have now.
They needed to repair their brand a bit, didn't they?
A lot. They had a very large problem. So they've done okay during this period in terms of pushing, loan payments out. They've entered into an arrangement with the federal government with regard to SME guarantee loans. Federal government picks up half the risk. They pick up half the risk. So these are unsecured loans. So it's not, you know, your house isn't riding on it. And I think for all small business people like me in the past, you know, you knew if things went wrong, it was, you know, your house was going too. And that's pretty tough. So look, they've done well. And just to, you know, defend the ATO for a moment, something again I didn't think I'd do very often, but I will on this, that the ATO's tried really hard with JobKeeper. You know, they honestly couldn't pay JobKeeper before they had some sort of sign-off that employers had actually paid staff. If you think about it, the amount of rorting that would have occurred if they'd paid before they got any sign-off from the small business that the employee had been paid would have been, you know, it would have been a shocker.
It would have been a repeat of the insulation bat sort of scandal or something, wouldn't it?
It would have been. And so you get why they went down the path that they did. And I have to say, the banks on the whole have been really keen to help with those sort of short-term cash flow issues. That said, you know, the hard bit here is it's hard for banks to do what's called the look-through, to determine, we can enter into a new loan for a business based upon the SME guarantee thing, even with the federal government underpinning it, based upon what the business will look like post-COVID. And also for them not to end up with allegations that they hadn't lent responsibly in the future. Really hard, but I have to say our experience is they're trying really hard and to achieve that. And remember, it's not just the big four here. It's the second tier banks and also the fintechs or the bigger fintechs are in this space. You know, people would have heard of Moolah and Prosper and Get Capital and those guys. So there's lots more competition in this space. And then, of course, we've got the new challenger banks, the people like Judo, who are focusing on small business lending, and so have those fascinating things called small business bankers, who actually make an effort to understand what your business looks like. This is not the environment we had a couple of years ago, and it shows that things have improved, competition has improved, and there is more focus on financial institutions that actually are focused on small business lending. And what a great outcome.
And I think business is more open to alternatives, more open to some of these other options that are out there at the moment as well. Mind you, I'm not seeing a lot lent. What about you, Rebecca?
No, and I was going to comment on that. And I think that some of that might actually come back around to where we started this conversation, where if the banks are doing a look through and they're not lending to you, maybe there is a risk that your business model is not the most appropriate model moving forward. So if you're thinking you're ticking all the boxes and you can't get it across, sometimes it's just the banks being a bit slow, but maybe this is really your opportunity to think about whether or not your business will pay it later. There's got to be some good reasons at times why the banks are not lending you the money. And these are conversations we're having with our clients all the time. The banks, if they're not giving you the money, they have a valid point. You might not be able to pay this back later. And yes, it's not secured. And yes, your house isn't at risk. But is it really the best thing for you to take on the debt right now?
And look, you're absolutely right that not as much is being lent as we thought would be, that would go out the door here. And that is a problem, there's no doubt. But at the end of the day, the last thing small businesses want is debt they can't repay. Even if it's not secured against your house.
Yep, and you still have to make that $100 and pay that tax before you can repay that debt. And people forget, they're not keeping track so much of how much they are pushing down the road and not thinking about how much they need to improve their profits to be able to have the cash to pay that back.
So that's got to be the major message from today, at least from my perspective, is please go and see your financial advisor, the people that you're getting advice from, and sit down and determine what your business is going to look like post September or October, and just do a solid cash flow based upon what you know now. So at least you know what you're going to have to turn over. If your business was struggling before COVID, it's not all of a sudden going to be a whole heap better at the other end. So doing what you always did is probably not a good outcome for anybody. So good time to think differently.
Absolutely. There's a great question on the Q&A here for you, Kate. Should the government bring back the long lunch and encourage people to spend in the community? What do you reckon?
Can I say absolutely? We just produced a document called the COVID-19 Recovery Plan, which one of the things is let's get rid of fringe benefit tax for small business. And remember, from my perspective, my job is the SME sector, so maybe you should get rid of fringe benefits for everyone. But remember that big businesses, the big guys can have restaurants in their building and can have the coffee machines in their building, and it's not fringe benefits. It's the little guys that end up on the wrong end of this. So, there are dumb things like the fringe benefit tax that could be abolished as we go forward. We think that things like instant asset write-off at $150,000 should be maintained, at least in the SME space.
So just for small business, keep it at that 150, you reckon?
Yeah, we do. I mean, look, maybe it should be broader than that, but again, my focus is on this in the small business space, because let's be fair, for small businesses, most things that you might be buying to, invest in your business is going to be under that. So it means that you can, as long as, remember, instant asset write-off only works when you've actually got a profit to write it off against.
But what it does do is it simplifies business. It simplifies even cash flowing, because it aligns tax with cash.
That's right. So no depreciation, none of those things, if you don't want to. So if you could get rid of fringe benefit tax, if you could get rid of a lot of depreciation, unless you want to, you want to do that. And the other thing we've said is, look, if you want to, maybe it'd be good to be able to pay your superannuation payments and your PAYGW in one go to the ATO, and they can fix it up with the superannuation funds that you don't have to do it. There's some things like that could cut the red tape, could let small business get on with, running their businesses. And I think it's a good time to think that way. What do we really need, and what could we just get rid of?
Well, the other thing I did a shout out for on the FBT front the other day, Kate, was I'd love to see wellness programs become FBT exempt. And, at the moment, if I as a business owner want to go and do a week retreat for my health and mental and health and physical health, then that would be subject to FBT at the moment. And we need some help. The business owners need some support in this regard in the next little while.
Couldn't agree more. And we've got to be able to, as business owners, be able to say to our staff, look, we'd love you, you're struggling. I mean, or we could, a couple of days at one of those retreats, getting some support, whatever, shouldn't be subject to fringe benefits. But it is. Of course, if you happen to be a really big company, you can put a gym in your building and not pay fringe benefit tax.
Yes.
Which is really wrong. There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I agree. I totally agree with you. Rebecca, we got some questions on there.
We do, but before I jump to another question, I actually just want to keep going on the mental health item that you've brought up, John, because Scott Morrison did announce, I think it was last week, a mental health plan.
Yes.
Are there provisions in there that will actually help small business owners through the immense stress that they've gone under? I know that the target really is around that individual, but that's what a smaller family business is. It's individuals really just trying to feed their families and their teams' families. So is there specific provision in there for businesses?
Look, there's a range of things that are available. On my website, on the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise website, there's something called My Business Health. And what we've tried to do is link together your business, the health of your business and the health of you as a small business person. Because, let's be fair, if you don't look after yourself as a small business person, you're not going to be in any state at all to help drive your business out the other side of COVID, you know, and nobody, the stress at the moment is just beyond belief. As I said to start with, no one could have planned for this. You know, no one could have determined that businesses that were tracking along quite well, you know, were fine one day and closed the next. You know, all of the things we know about. This is stress beyond anybody could imagine. And it's important for small business people to not perceive that they're Superman or Superwoman. 1 in 5 of us are going to experience mental health issues at some stage in our life. You put the sort of stress that is involved in small business at the moment on top of that, and you know, you start getting up to 1 in 2, you know, of people who will experience mental health issues. So on our My Business Health site, there is some links to a range of services that are available. Beyond Blue has been funded to put together or to run a COVID-19 service, which has both phone and online, but 24/7 mental health professionals at the other end of the line, you know, to help you, to give you some support. There's now capacity for video-based consultation with psychologists and psychiatrists. To an extent, we have a little bit of a shortage of psychiatrists in Australia, but so what used to be virtually no services available, there's a lot of services that are more available now because they're available outside normal business hours. Small business owners would always say to me, well, it's all very nice, Kate, but, you know, we're running our business, you know, we need to be able to talk to someone after hours. Now, for some businesses at the moment, they're not open, that's true. But there are, so My Business Health is the site, and it's got links to a range of services that are available, including the Beyond Blue support line. And you will speak, if you want to speak on the phone, if you want to operate online, you will be communicating with a mental health professional, not some call centre somewhere.
Yeah, great stuff.
That's fantastic information. Thank you for that. I will jump to a question now from the audience. Kate, does ASB FEO have anything in the works to support small businesses? Subsidies start to dry up and they cannot be kicked any further down the road, and many of them will have to seriously consider closing up shop permanently. And I might also add to that a little bit, in those businesses that haven't yet suffered from any of the impacts of COVID, because there are some industries that have been able to roll through this, particularly in construction or big project work companies. They won't be hit for another 6 to 9 months. So what does the future landscape look like to them, and what support is government currently talking about 6, 9 and 12 months from now?
Look, what we're saying to government, and I have to say I think government is listening, is that, you know, the recovery won't be even. You know, there are businesses who will be, you know, okay reasonably quickly. There's about 20% of businesses on our stats that are actually trading the same or better than they were before COVID, for a whole range of reasons, obviously, because of the businesses that they're in and so on. But so what we're saying to government is, in areas, say, like the tourism industry, and it's going to be a long time before businesses that are focused on overseas tourists, you know, are back and operating. Now, I know a lot of them are pivoting, a lot of them are trying to focus on different approaches, but it's going to take a bit of time. And of course, we need state governments to open their borders to get, you know, internal tourism happening. And hopefully the Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Island bubble will give us a little bit of effort in the tourism space. But, you know, this is going to take time. So what we're saying to government is, in terms of things like JobKeeper and so on, we're going to have to look at where particular industries are up to, because it's ridiculous to say gone on the 28th of September.
Yeah.
If the business is, you know, still is not open or hasn't been open for a while. People in the events space, you know, there's a limit to what you can do in your business with online events. It, you know, it doesn't, you know, it's a good thing to do and many are doing it, but you know, you need bums on seats, you need people. So, you know, yes, we are talking to government, others are too. I believe they're listening. With things like the construction industry, I have to say, it's my view in that space, what a great opportunity to address some of the issues we've got in the housing space. You know, low cost housing for older people, community-based housing, you know, the build to rent space, which is big overseas where, you know, large apartment buildings are built to rent, not to sell. You know, there's a range of things we can do in Australia that we haven't done that much, but we could. And I hope that that we're looking outside the square to address some of the issues that we need to address, and now is a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another question on here, Kate, change of tact. What is your view on Solomon Lew's media article on landlords? Will this influence small business operators? Have you seen that article?
Is it the one where he said he wasn't going to pay rent? That one?
I think
or is
so,
it
yeah.
another one, Jeff? Can I say I may not have had the same level of concern with that if it hadn't been that Solomon Lew and his large number of retail brands that run off the back of that didn't then blow out payment times to small business. So, you know, the reality is small businesses are doing it really tough. And so, you know, I have to say I have some very real issues, and I've said it in the public arena before, with pushing out his cash flow problems down the supply chain. In terms of commercial rents, it's the issue that my office and other small business commissioners around Australia are taking more of our time than anything else, trying to get decent outcomes for small businesses. There is, you know, the National Cabinet, which is the Premier's, Chief Minister's, Prime Minister, put together a compulsory commercial tenancy code, which does require landlords to negotiate outcomes where there is a reduction in rent and a deferral of rent. That said, you know, you've still got a contract is the dilemma, and I just so not too many people are in a position that Solomon Lew is saying just not paying. Unfortunately for small businesses, that's really not an option.
Yeah, for small business, it often ends up being the end of their business. You know,
absolutely.
Some types of things. You know, those little decisions like that can be absolutely catastrophic.
That's true. So look, the code, for those people who are listening, the mandatory commercial tenancy code is great. It does stop people being evicted for 6 months. The problem is at the end of that doesn't happen anymore. That if your business has lost 50%, shall we say, in turnover, at least half of that has to be rent reduction, but the other half is deferral.
Yeah.
So, you know,
still got to catch up on at some point, don't they?
Still got to pay it. That's the, you know, these are the things that's really important small business get their head around, you know, what that kicking down the road thing actually delivers for them down the road.
Kate, thank you so much for sharing your insights today with it. We greatly appreciate your time and giving us what's going on between your organisation and government discussions, and what you're seeing out there is absolutely amazing for us to hear. What would you leave us with as parting word of advice, I suppose, to small business or family enterprise out there that you'd encourage a business owner, business manager, business leader to be thinking about at this point in time?
What I'd be saying is, look, the future isn't going to be the same as the past, but everybody understands and that small business is the engine room of our economy. To get the Australian economy going is going to require getting small business going. So everyone's on your side. People want to buy and use Australian. So we're in a good spot. Your challenge is to focus on your customers, who they are, what they need, and where they need it, and structure your business around that and get your cash flow right.
Love it. Rebecca, do you want to add anything to Kate's wise words there?
No, it's just a woman after my own heart is exactly what I would have said.
Love the focus on customer. I just think that if we continually focus on the customer and the experience that they are having, then we will have a business because the customers will be there and they'll want to deal with us.
Yep.
Again, Kate, thank you so much for your insights. As I said at the beginning of this Calm COVID Convo today, all of this is building up for us to start to change or evolve the conversation for those that are ready to evolve the conversation. Even those that are not quite out of the woods yet, we need to start thinking about the other side of it. Like Kate said, we need to start thinking about those debts that we've deferred. How are we going to repay that? How are we going to evolve our business model so we can repay that at that point in time? We're also going to be announcing shortly a special day that we're calling Rebound. Now, Rebound is all about how can we help businesses rebound. Again, remaining sensitive to those businesses that are struggling, but what conversations can we have? What insights can we share? What practical takeaways can we give you guys to think about how you can rebound on the other side of this? So keep an eye out for that on the 10th of June. The structure of it will be completely online. You can register for the whole day or you can register for one session. Come along to the bits you want or check in whenever you like later on to the recordings. We'll be covering things from change, from how we work, to cash flow. We've got to talk cash flow and all of this, brand, marketing, and some of the basics, not basic stuff, but some of the more important stuff like implementation. How do we actually then get stuff done? So keep an eye out for that in your inboxes in the next little while. Some great insights there for you. But of course, if anyone has any questions with anything COVID related for their business, check out our website, businessdepot.com.au. You'll see on the blog page, our one blog that brings everything together around all the support and all the advice with regards to that. And of course, check out the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman's website as well, which has some great tips and everything on there to help as well. Once again, Kate, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.